everybody, it's time for my top 5. Today I am talking about shorter versions of games that are as good as the original game, so they're equally great. So there's this base game that came out, and then they came out with a shorter version, which is a dice game or a card game or a roll and write, or some shorter version that is maybe a little bit more accessible and takes less time to play. That's what this list is dedicated to. Right into it. My number 5 equally great shorter game is from one of my favorite games. I might say my favorite altogether. Yeah, it's the Castles of Burgundy, and I am talking about the card game. I know there are other shorter versions of the Castles of Burgundy, the dice game, but I like the card game. I think the card game captures the board game so well and does so with literally only cards. There's not a die, there's not a pencil, there's not a token, there's just cards, and it's very, very cool. Players are going to have one of 2 cards to pick from that act as their die. It has a die value on it, and they're going to play one of them down to do one of 6 actions, and these actions are just straight from the board game itself. A player can take a card from the display, and that has to match the die column from which it comes. The next thing you can do is just take one of those cards that you have and place it into your estate. This is like you building the tile in the board game. And of course the die has to match, or you have to fudge it with one of your workers, which again you do in the board game. And the third action you can take is to sell goods, which of course you sell goods in the base game. The cool thing about when you sell goods in the card game is that you are going to start the next round if you have sold goods last in that particular round. It doesn't change the active round. So if I sold goods, then I would get that first player card, but let's say my opponent then sells goods after me, they take the card. And so it's a way for you to make sure that you go first in the next round, which is super, super advantageous. You can restock workers, getting 2 workers. You can also get a silver, and silver cards in this card game are going to allow you to take a wild action, essentially, take an extra bonus action. The cool thing about the card game is all the same stuff is there. Every single card is exactly the same. So you've got the cool buildings, and when you play a building into your estate, you get to do the thing, whatever it is, right away. You've got knowledge cards and mind cards and just all the good stuff. So it feels like you're playing Castles of Burgundy, but you're playing the card game, which is shorter, and it is just as fun, and it gives you that feel and flair. Even though you're not rolling dice, you're still getting the luck of the draw with your cards that give you different dice values. So it just works. It works, it works, it works. All right, let's move on to my number 4. Now, this game, when it came out, kind of blew me away with its kind of simplicity and its cleanliness and the new mechanic, which still builds in the player interaction with the player to your left and to your right. And it's based off a fantastic game that kind of revolutionized the gaming industry when it came out over a decade ago. It is... yeah, 7 Wonders Architects. Oh, this tall, look how tall it is. It's so tall. Oh my gosh. This came out and I was just blown away. I love how you're still building a wonder. So you have 5 stages to your wonder, and you are playing with the player to your right and with the player to your left, and you draw a card from the little face-up stacks between you and the player to your right and let you say, I want this one, or I want this one, or you can draw from the center as well, and you are simply building your structure. Every wonder has a special unique trigger that lets them do something unique and interesting. The way science works in this game is super easy, but feels like the science from before with the protractors and the dials and the little eraser thing. It's probably just a tablet. I think it's a tablet. It's not an eraser. But that's how those green science cards work. And you still have, there's a couple other features. There's a cat in this that allows you to kind of peek at a card before you take it. And that's really, really cool. And also, there's this military feature. And in the original game, you played 3 long phases. And you had Age 1 cards, and Age 2 cards, and Age 3. And you're building up all these really cool, machines and wonders and things in your civilization. Well, here there are no phases. It just goes in turn order until someone triggers the end of the game by building their 5th wonder, their 5th piece of their wonder. And so the battle is instigated by the players, and I like that feature. I think that's a really cool development that keeps the battle, and you still fight just the people to your left and to your right, but it makes it like planned, and it makes it intentional, and people can see it coming and they can try to prepare for it, but it's really cool. The game is faster, it's shorter. This is the game I teach people if I want them to really just love board games and see like what's out there. It's really fun, and I feel like it captures 7 wonders, but in a shorter, smaller, easier to play game. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Wow, we are just blazing right along. I'm super excited to jump into my number 3. It's based off of a fantastically thematic and beautiful game, and I was honestly surprised that it was just as good, it was equally great as the original. The game is... Whoa! Why does Kim not have this game? Where is it? Well, I'll let you know. I do not own a copy of this game that I'm talking about. It is called Mysterium Park. Now, this is Mysterium, but shorter, faster, and easier for younger players to play. I couldn't believe that they did it. They streamlined it. They just went and made it actually easier to play. I like Mysterium Park as just a standalone game. And I bought it for my nieces and nephew for their, I think it was a Christmas or 2 back, and I was able to play it with them just this last year. And so we jumped into it. They loved it. I think the youngest at the time was 9. And so from 9 up, they got it. They absolutely nailed it, understood the game, were so creative, because this game asks players to get clues from one person. One person at the table is playing the ghost who's, silent, but they're giving these clue cards out to players so that they can figure out the murderer and the weapon and the location and all of these things that help them identify who might be the killer at the table. And it's not a player, it's the stuff that's on the table. And so you have to give clues that are about shapes and colors and feels and details, but you never really know what the ghost is saying. And it's just a really, really fun, interactive, ongoing, kind of real-time game that's not timed, but it's just always being played. You're always thinking and helping and talking, and it's just a wonderful cooperative game. So the Mysterium Park just, again, streamlines everything, and it captures the same feel and the same artwork and the mood. There still is someone who's playing the ghost in this, but it just feels easier to play than Mysterium. So I was just so pleased with it. And again, I don't have the copy. I gave it to my family. I gave it to my sister and her kids so that they can play it. And I hope they're just getting a whole lot of fun and gameplay out of it, because I think it's a fantastically equally great game as the base board game. Okay, we are on to my number 2. This is a game that when I heard about the Kickstarter for it, I just about lost my mind. I think I squealed a little bit. I mean, so excited, because I have been a fan of the board game of this for years. We have scorecards going back so far, all the way to when we got it. It is my favorite horse racing game. And yes, the game I'm talking about is Long Shot, the dice game. So Long Shot is my favorite horse racing game. I love it. It's got everything. Now the game does take a little bit over an hour to play. I'd say it's probably, 90 minutes range. And it feels long, which is nice. But this takes the game and the flair and the fun with the dice rolling and makes it a roll and write. It's fantastic. So in Long Shot the Dice Game, players, 2 to 8 players mind you, are going to have a personal player board, and they kind of start with a couple bets, and their bets are going to be unique. So every player is going to draw a card and then mark down certain bets for the horses to give them kind of like an edge or something to go for. And when you roll the dice, you essentially are going to activate the dice based on the result of the number. So not only does the horse move the amount of spaces based on the horse die that you rolled, that number on the horse die is going to activate a certain location that lets you do something with that horse. So you could buy that horse, and then that horse becomes yours, and it costs a certain amount of money, and if you don't have the money, then you can't buy that horse. You can also go to the concessions and mark off the concessions horse, and when you have columns and rows that are complete, you get bonuses, and those bonuses are so important. So you are investing in the concessions with the horses, but the horse die matches the action you take. There's also a location for you to mark a horse number next to the helmet or the jersey. And both of those places allow you to do really, really cool things like make bets on that horse after they're across the no bets line, or influence that horse to move more often by marking on other horses that particular number so that they're triggered. So in the base board game, you would roll the dice, and only if you rolled a die that matched on one of your horse cards would they activate. But in this game, things are sped up, and so it activates every time the die is rolled, no matter who rolls it. And so it's going to activate horses, so it's really important to get that jersey mark so that you have more influence. So when a die is rolled, it's going to trigger a certain horse to move faster and faster and faster. I really like that. The final score really comes down to a lot of bets. I've played this game so many times, and I can't tell you that when someone makes really, really strong investment in a horse, and then that horse comes in top, it comes in like first or second, that's where most of the points are earned. So I would always say work on those bets and really work the concession stands, because that's where you get variety. You get like different kinds of bonuses that you get to add to your gameplay, whatever it is. They're so, so cool. Fun things like moving horses back spaces, moving some horses forward, just grabbing a bunch of cash, even just getting a free horse. Let's say there's a horse out there that hasn't been bought up yet and they're doing pretty good. You can just nab that horse with one of those concession bonuses. So Long Shot the Dice Game, yes, absolutely. And it really reaches higher up on my charts, on my top 5, because I love the original game so much. And I can pull this game out, and it's way easier and much, much shorter, but gives me the same feel. And there are so many horse card collections here. So there are, I think I have 4 different of all different horses that have different features and different bonuses. And in the base game, you've just got horses 1 through 10, and that's it. So I really like Long Shot the Dice Game as the shorter version, and equally as great as the board game. All right, before I move on with my number 1 on this top 5, I would love to slow down and tell you 2 that just missed the list. These are my honorable mentions, and I think they're both incredibly strong, and you should consider them. The very first one is based off of a game that is beautiful and takes you on a journey. The shortened version of it is Trails. This is a shorter, smaller, cheaper version of Parks. And I think Trails has just a lovely feel to it. If you want to go on a walk, you want to go on a hike, and at the end of the trails, you're going to find these objectives that you can pay your resources for, because you're getting those on these little cards that you place out as your trail. But as you come back, the sun is going down, and you start to flip over these cards, the central action spaces that generate this very natural feeling of ending to this. It tells you pretty much when the game is going to end. It's paced incredibly well and feels so much like Parks, but it's shorter, smaller, faster, and cheaper. The second game that didn't make the list that's also a runner-up is a shorter version of a game that has scads and scads of iterations. It's a cooperative game that, yes, asks you to save the world. The shorter version is Pandemic Hot Zone North America. So if you want that cooperative feel of saving the world with a smaller board and more focused cities and locations, this is it. This is the game that you give to entry-level gamers. This is the game you play to start your night, 30 to 45 minutes, and you get that feel of all the different, cubes all over with the, epidemic exploding out, but you're running around with specialty characters trying to, mitigate all of these, explosions of these pandemics, which I think fits really well, specifically with just a North America map, so you're not saving the world, but it sure does feel like it. Oh, I'm so excited for my number one shorter games that are equally as great as the base game that they're based off of. So this one in particular combines a couple games that are my favorite. I really, really like them. And I think what it does is it just makes the game fun, but it has the same feel as the base game. It has a whole lot less bits to get out, a whole lot less expansions, and it has just some lovely features. The shorter game that is my number one is Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition. Okay, so this game combines Race for the Galaxy with the card action selection mechanism, and then it also has Terraforming Mars. And so you still have that feel. You've got these cool cards, the 3 different types of cards. You've got those red cards with the event cards. You've got the green and the blue cards that let you do really cool stuff, build up these, different machinery and different functions that give you discounts or cool stuff or plant life. And you're still doing that, but you are selecting a card, and then that card can't be used until you take it back after the next round when you play a new card. So you really have to plan those actions. And if other players at the table are playing different cards, you get to do those actions as well. So there's a bonus for you playing your card, but you also get to do the things. And that's just such a cool mechanism. I love the way those actions are selected, a la Race for the Galaxy. The flavor and feel of Terraforming Mars is jam-packed into Ares Expedition. So you've got the same cards, you've got the same tags, you've got that activation. Keeping track of all of your resources is actually quite easy. The board is about half the size as usual, and you're keeping track of your ongoing progress while you also have keeping track of the stuff that you have, not just your production. So there's just so many lovely features here. And of course the game ends same as usual, certain number of ocean tiles, which is so much easier in this game. The temperature reaches the end of the track, or you also reach the end of your oxygen track. I really feel like I'm going to pull this game out more often unless I just want to use every single expansion for Terraforming Mars, sitting down with some friends at a convention, because I have a big group of people who just love playing Terraforming Mars, myself included. But I think in the meantime, throughout the year before I get to Board Game Geek Convention, I'm going to be pulling out Ares Expedition probably more often because it's just nice. It gives the same feel in a smaller box, in a smaller amount of space on the table, and generally a shorter amount of time. So that's it, everybody. I've done my top 5 of the shorter games that are equally as great as the original game they're based off of. I want to know what yours are, though. Let me know in the comments below, what games do you like that have that shorter variant? I want you to tell me about that dice game or that card game, or in just some cases, a shorter, more streamlined version of the game. And I'll look for those in the comments. Thank you, folks, for staying tuned. I'll see you next time.